Welcome to the SoundCentric podcast. I am Adam Dash, and today we are joined by one of the best artists that I know of. He is your favorite artist. He's doing your favorite artist album cover. This year, he had 1,234,990 cumulative plays from his art on Spotify. It could be more than this since then, but 30 plus singles this year, 7 plus album covers, 5 plus EPs, 3 tour posters, 28 concert, 5 events doing the art for them. He has worked with, and sorry if I mispronounce any of these names, Vayli, all the people from CXR, Kieran the Nomad, Reed Starks, Geogenesis, Cam Hayden, Morgan Gold, Paris Price, Elijah LaFleur, Bayri, Andrew Kelly. Definitely a lot more people after that. But Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I think we're actually up another like 400,000 on Spotify since that one. So that's continuing to move. It's been wonderful. Also, shout out Valet and Bayri. We got you on the pronunciation.
There we go, yeah. What did I say for Bayri? I think I got Valet.
I think you said like Bayri. Bayri like Kyrie.
Shit. Bayri.
You're good.
Man, it's hard. But thank you so much for coming on the show. You're someone that I've seen so active on Twitter, and we were just talking about this, how strong the music community is on Twitter and how supportive of it is. So, I don't know, tell me about your start on Twitter and making these like connections with all these people, whether it be, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, guys, it's CQCX. CQCX, you pairing out with them, doing art for all these amazing artists. How do you get into this community?
Yeah, so CQCX goes long before I was even on Twitter. We all formed in like 2015. We got close knowing each other on the rapgenius.com forums back when those were a thing. And so we're like based all around the country, just like nerds getting to know each other on a website. Eventually those forums shut down. We all kind of abandoned the website, just had a little group chat. But eventually they all started taking music more seriously. I started taking design more seriously. So it just kind of became natural collaborating more and more there. And then around 2021, 2022, we started adding in Savvy McFly and Lil Dubois. And then this year we added Reed Starks. Yeah, wonderful people, wonderful artists, all of them. And I think what really helped us is that we were all like good friends for at least a year before there was any work added. So like we really kind of get each other's people. As far as the whole Twitter community, I think I've done a good job getting myself pretty into it just because I'm such a fan first. Like everyone I'm working with, I genuinely like believe in and support their music. And I just try to, get to know people over time, support them first. And then, if something ends up making sense, I'd love to work with them. And if it doesn't, that's cool too. Like I like just supporting the community and it'll often support back. But even when it doesn't, that's cool too. Like I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, the power of the forums and group chats and stuff. It's so awesome how you can connect with people. So the way we started the podcast was I was in an Ohio State hip hop group chat that Sam and then our first couple episodes co-hosts, Jordy, were in it, and I was the only person writing into a group chat to the void because like my closest friends aren't listening to the exact music I listen to. So this was like an outlet where I'm like, yo, you hear this new Benny the Butcher verse or something? So they reached out to me and they're like, we're thinking about starting a podcast, and we see that like, you're just constantly writing in this group chat. Like, do you want to join? So these were people that like were strangers to me. Like Sam's from Ohio. I'm from New Jersey. And yeah, it's cool how friendships can form online and you can actually build something like that. And you've obviously built such a following yourself for your amazing art. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it really is crazy. I'm from a pretty small town. And so just like in 2014, talking about Saba and No Name to people across the country, it was cool always like finding that community.
Yeah, it's sick. Well, before we get into your whole background, how you started art, how you actually make album art, which is something I'm so interested to hear how you do it, I wanted to start with a fun topic of our top 10 album covers of all time, which I know was way too hard of a choice to make you do. And it might put you a little bit on the spot. You have 24 hours to kind of decide this list.
Yeah, I put one together. I more answered kind of the 10 that influenced me the most, more than just a top 10, because it seemed like a answerable question.
Yeah.
I feel like my favorites would change every week, but I ended up
Mhm.
going with the Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, Anderson Paak, Malibu, Mac Miller, The Divine Feminine, Two Chains, Based on a True Story, Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon 2, Lil
Fire.
Wayne, The Carter 3, Migos, Culture, Young Thug, Jeffrey, Kanye, 808s and Heartbreak, and Wale's The Mixtape About Nothing.
That's fine. That's a good list. I want you to explain it in a second. But was Carter 3 the one where he's on the car, like the white?
No, that's the Carter 2.
Carter 2.
The Carter 3 is the baby with the
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
little
yeah,
Carter tattoo and
yeah.
like Wayne's tattoos.
So before I give
Carter
my
2 is
list,
a great cover too, though.
no, yeah, it's fire. What parts of these album covers actually inspired you? Like, what stuck out to you from some of these covers?
Different things from each, obviously. Pet Sounds is my favorite use of the font Cooper Black on an album cover. You've seen it on everything from Thundercat to Tyler the Creator to the Beatles to the Beach. Like everyone uses Cooper Black on their work, but Pet Sounds is just my favorite use of it. It does a really good job of kind of laying it out, and then I really like the colors on it.
Mhm.
Malibu and Culture are both just like some of the best collage work I've ever seen, and
Yeah,
like
so
got me really interested in collaging, which has really impacted a lot of my work. Based on a True Story, Jeffrey and 808s are all really good examples of like less is more and kind of saying something more than trying
mhm.
to make the most complicated image. Kind of the same with the Divine Feminine. That's a good example of just like layering
Mhm.
disparate elements to kind of communicate something more than the sum of its parts. I
Mhm.
like the Carter 3 a lot as just like a it's mocking up something realistic, but also without trying to trick you into thinking it's real.
Mhm.
Um, I think a lot of times where design fails is when you like try to make something look really real and just it ends up in that uncanny valley where like this kind
Yeah.
of commits to it's ridiculous to have a baby with tattoos, so
Yeah.
you kind of start out on a level playing field. And then Men on the Moon 2, just like I don't know, that was one of the first covers that I remember distinctly being impressed by. Like I
Mhm.
was big into Cuddy early into getting into hip hop, and just like I don't know, the stars in the background of that record, it was just made such an impression on me.
Yeah. Now, I love hearing how different people take in album covers. It's the same way that we all listen to music for different things. We could listen to a song and you could be like, the ad libs on that were crazy, but I'm over here like, oh, the harmonies were wild. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that like the font is something that sticks out to you. When I give my list, I won't be talking too much about fonts, but I love that like, that's what you nerd out about.
They're the
Uh,
first thing I noticed. Oh, this is my merch, but this is a new
Ready?
logo I made for myself, but it's in Cooper Black. It's my favorite font.
That's it, man. I gotta start using that. I've been using like Arial too much, and
And then,
honestly,
sorry,
running.
is another slight plug. This is
Plug it.
sweatshirt merch I'm doing. That it says "Real music always wins," but over each letter is like a letter from one of my favorite album covers. So it's
Wow.
like the Acid Rap R, De La Soul, Channel Orange, The Love Below, Malibu. If you're reading this, it's too late. Good Command City, Man on the Moon, Carter 2. Like, I'm not going to go through all of them, but
Yeah, yeah. No, dude, that's awesome that you thought of that idea. I'm a big fan of, like, do you know the Wang Sap logo where it's kinda like the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
magazine clippings? I just love when something's spelled out with different fonts for each letter and different colors, so that's kinda like what you're doing with that. That's sick.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
curious,
these will go live sometime next year. I just got sampled in, so I'm
I
working on
told
figuring out strategy.
once I get the job and I have money, I will I will purchase that.
We got the
Uh,
blank embroidered on the sleeve too.
oof, oof. I'm curious, 2 albums, 2 Kanye albums. I'm curious what your initial reaction was to these and maybe how it's grown on you because they're pretty,
Okay. The
pretty split on
covers.
people's opinions. The Life of Pablo, what was your initial reaction?
Initially, I thought it looked kind of lazy, like it was, a MS Paint kind of clip art type thing. But over time, I grew to really, really love that cover.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's subverting a lot of expectations really effectively. And just like, I think it just really captures the energy of that album and it fits the music so well
Yeah.
that my like initial reaction pretty much got lost in the shuffle entirely. Like I now love that cover.
Yeah, now what you said is exactly what I thought. Like, it looks like clip art, and it's so
Mhm.
interesting. I mean, Kanye does a lot of bad things and says a lot of stupid stuff, but it's impressive that,
Yeah.
like, he constantly does art stuff that years later people are still copying that cover and that style of work where it's like
Yeah, I think in some ways one of his greatest strengths is the community he surrounds himself with of like
mhm,
other artists and designers. And so he, when you have at the time when Donda was functioning as like a creative agency, they had dozens of incredible designers all submitting different things. And like,
mhm.
I don't know, sometimes the hardest work to make is what looks the simplest and the easiest. And I think that's a good example of that. Like there was clearly a lot of thought went in
Mhm.
where like, I don't know, the Yay album cover does seem kind of just thrown together.
Yeah, it sounds like he was in, like, a van, took a picture of a cliff, and then drew on it in Snapchat.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's your opinion on the Donda cover? Because I know some people are saying, "Oh, it's so cool how it represents, like, the death and it's all black." I think I'm just surprised it's pretty lazy because it's been done before, and that's the part I'm more held back on enjoying the cover.
Yeah, I think it just isn't a cover. I think it does fit the album in that I also don't think he finished that album.
Okay,
Um,
that's fair.
I think like I don't know. I ended up making my own cover for it at the time. I also ended up making my own track list and sequencing of the album at the time because I think there were a lot of cool ideas there, but it just didn't quite come together.
It did not. Yeah, the only song I really play from that is the, Roddy Ricch one. For some reason, I
Oh,
love.
interesting.
I don't
I
know why.
think Moon and
Oh, Moon's great. I just don't know. I don't play it for some reason, but that's always been a great song.
Come to Life was a good one too.
So for my list, this was pretty hard, and there's definitely a lot of cool covers that I've seen that I don't listen to the songs enough, so it just wasn't in my playlist, so I kind of forgot about the cover. But these are
Mhm.
some ones that were important to me or just thought were awesome. I feel like Astroworld was just such a moment when the cover came out.
Which do
And
you prefer, the day or the night?
hmm, I, I feel like the day one I like. There's just something
I'm
about the
with you.
colors and it's more bright on it. I think it
I'm with
gets
you.
the album more. Number 9, I have similar because it's such a cultural moment, is Views. Because like the album's called Views. He put himself on the top of the biggest building in the city he's from. The memes that were created by it, I feel like it was just such a huge cultural thing. And looking at
Mhm.
the cover, it's just sick.
It does bother me a little bit on that one that scale wise, he's like 30 feet tall,
Yeah.
but
He had his
it was a moment for sure.
yeah. Number 8, I wanted to choose one from Kanye, and I went with Graduation. I've honestly never really stared at the cover that much and really looked at like what was going on it. And I think just the whole trilogy idea with the bear and how much planning went into that, where before the college dropout was coming out, he knew the graduation was going to come, and he really
Hmm.
planned that all in his head. So I love the art. I'm sure you know the artist's name. I'm blanking on it.
Yeah, those Murakami.
Yeah, he's crazy. He did Kid See Goes too, right?
Yeah.
I could have said that one as well. Number 7, I got Pray for Haiti by Matt
Oh,
Kame.
that one's crazy.
I love the colors. I'm not sure what you would classify that type of art as, but it's just really cool. It's kind of like the Basquiat. I don't know if that's the
Yeah, it's
best
kind
way.
of based off of a Basquiat, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
it's really out there.
I was looking at some West Side Gun ones, and I was looking at like a Pray for Paris, and it's just the clip art chain is it's just
It's
not my
crazy
thing.
though. I don't know. That's probably
It's
my favorite Virgil cover.
it's so
Unless you
interesting.
count like I think Virgil also worked on like based on a true story and like some of those early Donda ones, but like
Yeah.
post Donda Virgil.
It's an interesting one, and I wanted to shout out some these people are on my list, but some people who have constantly great album covers that are kind of that style. Action Bronson, I always love his covers. I think he just
Yeah.
draws them himself, but I really
Yeah, he
like them.
painted his last one. Blue
And
Chips 2 was a classic one to me too. The
yeah,
like
that's the cartoon of him
animation. Yeah.
dunking. Yeah. And The Alchemist always just has sick ass covers. Bo Jackson, I think is the yeah,
Hmm.
Bo Jackson. It's just
That's the
I don't even
Boldy
know.
James collab with
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
sports cards interlaced.
That one's crazy. Honestly, most of the Boldy ones are crazy. From like a Tea in China. I'm blanking. I'm bad at title names.
The Price of Tea in China.
Price of Tea in China. That cover's sick. Did not make my list.
I really like
Number
the Real Bad Boldy one too, the Real Bad Man Boldy James collab album. That's got a sick. cover.
I think I can picture that one in my head. 6, I got Kids by Mac Miller. I just
Okay.
think it fits the essence of the album so well that it's 3 of his friends sitting on the bleachers. I think I'm comparing it to the new cover. I think there might be a new one on Apple Music that I was looking at compared to the old one, but it's on
It's
my ceiling.
simplified a bit now.
But
Yeah.
I always liked how kind of like animated but real it was, and I don't know, I just felt the vibe of a high school kid making an album.
Have you
I did
seen the
not.
movie Kids that like the cover's based on? I
I have.
haven't.
No, I have not. I honestly didn't know it
But
was
I
based on
just
something.
yeah, the
Makes sense.
lettering is like exactly the same as a movie called Kids that I think he even samples at some point on there.
Yeah, he does. It's also fun. Like, the Easy Mac cover is the opposite
The
scale.
Easy
Might be
Mac,
one
yeah.
of the worst covers.
I
Number
love
5.
watching movies too as a Mac cover.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really cool one with just like this red. He's been really big on like minimalistic covers. The more
Mm.
I'm thinking like swimming, obviously circles are very minimalistic. Faces is also
Even like Good AM is just
good. I am just his
his
face
head.
yelling. Number 5 for me. I only wanted to choose one from this artist, but Sam Spratt is such a damn good artist. But
Oh yeah.
Logic, Everybody. Just when I think back to how excited I was as a fan when that dropped and the different Easter eggs on it, like that just made the
Mm.
music so much cooler to me as a fan. So I don't know how people think about it now, but I know it's based off a famous painting. And it was like, oh my God, is that J. Cole in the top right corner? And like, oh, that's his dog at the bottom with the drum machine. So just as a fan, that made the experience even cooler. But Logic, I mean, he's very similar to like Tarantino. They love like Easter eggs and copying things that they love. So like
Oh, for sure.
most of the Sam
Sam
Spratt cover.
Spratt is crazy. That man is incredibly talented. I don't think
Yeah,
I've seen anything even like pretty good from him. Like it's all incredible.
incredible. Number 4, this could be a kind of a hot take. I really like the KOD cover. I have it on my
Okay.
ceiling in my bedroom. I just love the painting. It's really cool with Cole, and then you have all the kids that are kind of like drugged up, which kind of previews what the album is. I like the purple colors on it. I don't have too much of a detailed explanation on that one. I just think it's cool.
Word.
Number 3, I'm not sure you can see to the right of me. It has to be Flower Boy. I
I love that cover.
This tapestry has sat above my bed at college for like 3 years. I'm looking at it right now. I love the colors. It probably like I don't know if an album cover has ever like so closely aligned with the sound of the music. Like the album just sounds like a sunset and sounds orange. And
Hmm.
I think it was just the perfect cover for that album. Number 2, this has been this has been above my bed my entire life at home, not at college. To Pimp a Butterfly is
That's an incredible one.
the dopest thing. There's so much explanation that can go into it, and I think it just represents the album so perfectly. My people have come to my house and are very confused about what is above my bed. They're like, who are these people standing in front of the White House, and why is there like a dead guy at the bottom? But I tell them it's the best album ever
Yeah,
created.
it's a
So,
classic.
and number 1, you said it. It's the GOAT cover, Malibu by Anderson .Paak.
Shout out Dewey Saunders, man.
Yeah,
He is just incredible. Like he did that. He did Future's The Wizard. He's done a bunch of stuff with like
of course.
Turnstile. He's a huge influence on me, and like it's cool. Twitter is so cool that like we've gotten to communicate a little bit
Yeah,
back and forth, and like it's crazy that
I was
he's just out here.
he tweeted something about the album, and I didn't know he did the album, so I was just interacting with him about the cover. I'm like, it's literally on my ceiling right now, and sent a picture. Then I realized I'm like, oh, this is the guy who made the cover. It
Yeah,
is. I think I've had it since the first day of college, and it has survived 5 years at this point. And I
hell yeah.
hope it stays at the top of my ceiling. But to get into your background, because you kind of just touched on it, what were your influences to begin doing art? Was there a cover or something where you're like, this is so? How did they even think of this? How did your love for art start?
Not really. I think I always kind of had the eye for it way before I really had any sort of skill. um, where like I always appreciated a good cover and would check out music kind of based on covers. I know we're not supposed to judge books by their covers, but albums,
No,
they're fine, right?
it happens. Yeah.
Um, and just over time, I eventually started doing some simple work just for friends because they needed it, and I had Photoshop on my computer. I had to have it for my college major, so I was just like, yeah, I might as well play around in this, making simple flyers for friends and stuff. And then album book club was a big part of me, like doing collages every week for our picks and just kind of continuing to hone my skills, and then uh, I don't know. I think the biggest things that got me into wanting to make them was just opportunity. I graduating college in 2020, I was really looking to focus into working in live music, and then COVID hit, so that just wasn't an option at all.
Hmm.
So then I don't know, I had a lot of time, decided to learn and like really kind of cut my teeth in Photoshop. And then the cover for Paris Price's Killing Me Slowly with Chris Patrick and Dende really
Hmm.
kind of set things in motion for me and gave me some momentum. And then the the snowball kept rolling down the hill and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and here we are.
Yeah, and you kind of just touched on this about judging a book by the cover, but it's true that there are albums that I didn't listen to till I was older in life because I was naive and I'm like, I don't like the album cover, so I don't really want to click play. And there are
Yeah, for
covers
sure.
and there's covers you'll see that you think it doesn't really match the album. I don't know why they went with this cover. And I'm always
Mhm.
surprised by some mainstream artists because from my perspective, I don't know if this is true. I feel like they have the opportunity with so many great artists, and it's like you really went with that cover.
Yeah, I think sometimes you fall into the unfortunate thing of like trying to do design by committee where there are just kind of too many cooks in the kitchen to have a clear vision. Or,
Mhm.
if the designer may have made something incredible to start, and then, the focus group said, change this, change this. And eventually it just got
Mhm.
unrecognizable from where the good idea was. I always try to remember that like when critiquing big covers, because usually the designer is an incredibly talented person. It's just
Mhm.
something somewhere along the line, the message gets lost.
Are there any design trends that you wish would stop? Some things that you constantly see on covers where you're like, every single time, it's just not my thing.
I don't know if this counts as a trend, but I mean, obviously anything AI, I'm very
Yeah.
anti just morally. But as far as just like an actual design trend, I would always rather have no type than bad type. Like if you're gonna use type, do it well. And
Mhm.
if you're even questioning it, take it off, in my opinion.
How do you this kinda gets into the actual art of, like, how you even make an album cover. How do you find a font? Like, do you have, like, a stockpile in your head of, like, what different fonts look like, and you're like, "This is what will go with this one?" Or do you just keep trying them out and you just keep clicking random stuff and see what
I'm
works?
a hoarder with fonts. I have probably 3,000 fonts on my computer right now installed. Where like I'll immediately know what I want to use. Sometimes I'll stick to a classic, a Cooper Black, a Helvetica, like
Mhm.
one that sometimes you want to say something with your font choice, and so you kind of stick to a classic. Sometimes I will just literally scroll through, click, click, click. No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. Sometimes I will have downloaded a font 2 months ago and I'll finally realize like this is what I want to use it for.
Mhm.
I think your font really does have to match not just the like vibe of your cover, but also the specific letters in the word you're going for. So sometimes you'll think one'll work, but just like, oh, I don't like the way that E looks.
Mhm.
And so you keep going deeper and deeper. But I don't know, fonts are definitely one of the things I am most critical of and most like aware of. Even if I'm just
Mhm.
like looking at a menu at a restaurant, I'm always thinking about like how it's laid out, how the spacing is, how like the kerning and the letting and
Yeah.
everything are. And I'm just like, I don't know, that for some reason my eye just instantly picks up on
Yeah.
that.
No, I love that. That's what you notice at a restaurant. I think from an outside perspective, from both of these outside perspectives, it kinda reminds me of, like, layering drums in a song, and from, like, my perspective of not making beats, and you keep pressing a hi-hat at different sounds, you're like, "How did the producer choose which hi-hat sounded perfect for the song?" Because when you play it
Yeah.
just alone, it's like they all kinda sound kinda similar until you hear a good drum pattern, you're like,
You
"Oh."
just know. Yeah. Sometimes the one hits and you're just like, yep, that's it.
And how collaborative is your process? Because I'm sure artists come with you. Do you hear the album first and go with that? Do they tell you an idea and you run with it? I'm sure it's different every time. Or
Yeah. I think that's really the biggest answer, just that it's different every time. I do
yeah.
always try to get the music ahead of time when I can so that I can really make sure that whatever I'm making fits the sound and the energy of the music itself. But I've had artists send it to me and just say, "Hey, I trust you. Do what you want. Go crazy."
Mhm.
Um, I've also had artists say like, "Hey, I have this exact idea. Can you help me execute it? Let's, do this. And then I've also had like people where we kind of go back and forth and figure out what it is throughout the process.
Mhm.
Sometimes, it's like when I did a series for Kieran the Nomad, and we probably
It's
had
crazy.
3 or 4 hours of phone calls of just like, what are we trying to say? What do we want to do? Long before the music was done and before anything was started in terms of actual design.
To make sure I'm thinking about the right one, this is the one with like the clock on the face, or not clock? Yeah, or
It's a
not clock.
collage in a
Collage. Yeah.
mirror.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was on wax.
That's one of those examples where I'm like, how the hell does one think of that?
So this
And
is that collage.
oh my,
Um,
that's
but
so. Did you make it physically, then scan it into your computer, or you just did that
yeah,
after making that? That's
yeah,
so
that's
interesting.
physical. That's all like magazine
So
clippings and stuff.
is most of your collaging like that, or I assumed it was digital. I didn't really think about it.
It's about half and half. I got a scanner for Christmas last year and went crazy with it. But yeah, a lot of stuff's physical, a lot of stuff is digital. I really just am always kind of looking for inspiration in anything I see. So, sometimes I'm just going for a walk and I'll take a photo of, a metal grate that has an interesting texture to it. And I might use that as like an overlay for just a little tiny bit of texture on a cover a year later.
Yeah.
Um, the most important things to me in design are type, colors, texture, and like layout composition. And so those are really where I focus in the most. So I'm just always kind of paying attention to those things in the wild. I think one of the best ways to like stay inspired is just to always kind of keep your eyes open and just
Hmm.
think anything could be art.
That to make another comparison to production, you hear stories all the time of people voice recording the sound of the train, and they're like, "That kind of sounds like a cool hi hat pattern," and then they end up using it years later or months later. I think
Absolutely.
"Plain Jane" by A$AP Ferg was the sound of a train moving, and that's what the
Oh wow, I
beat
didn't
is.
know that.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities to that. Do you? I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. I hope it's the right disorder, but is it synesthesia when you can see
Synesthesia, yeah.
when you see colors when you hear music? Do you have that or?
I think I have like a really I think I have a kind of light version. Like I definitely associate colors and textures with sounds, but not like it's not like a visceral like.
Yeah,
I've heard people describe it as like literally seeing the colors, which I don't, but
yeah.
I definitely like they have an equivalent to me. And like sometimes I'll hear something and be like, this just doesn't match. I need to find a new color palette that like fits it better or something.
I think Pharrell has it. I think I've heard him talk about it. I
Yeah.
can't like I feel like I can picture like I said how Flower Boy sounds orange or on this new Boz album, there
Mm,
was a bunch of songs where I'm like, this sounds like the sunset. But I definitely don't have that full blown feeling of
gotcha.
literally seeing a color. I wanted to get into something that I saw you tweet about because I deal with this every single day, especially as a white person
Hmm.
who loves hip hop. You talked about imposter syndrome, and I'm curious how you experience that in your line of work.
Yeah. So I think I don't know. There's a quote that's like you're only as good as your last work. You're only as I think it's Andre 2000. Like you're only as funky as your last cut.
Yep.
Um, you're sometimes you just I don't know. I make a lot of stuff. I do a lot of volume, and sometimes I really love it. Sometimes I don't. Also, that rarely has any correlation to what other people think of it. So,
Yeah.
like I don't know. Sometimes people are all going crazy for art that you didn't really love, and so you feel like a fraud.
Yeah.
Sometimes the art you were super passionate about, no one really cares about, whether it's the algorithm not promoting it or that it just doesn't resonate to people for whatever reason. And I think there's also a lot of comparison in this world. Like, anytime you're making art and looking at a lot of art, you're going to see other people and kind of see what they can do that you can't. And
Mm.
every now and then it'll just hit you like, I don't know, you just start to think that maybe what you're doing isn't good enough or that you're not as far as they are along. There's also like, I'm a freelancer. So, there's not security in, oh,
Hmm.
there will always be a regular paycheck. Like if I'm not always making good stuff, eventually the like hype around myself could die out and I could just stop having work.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's an easy thing to fall into, but I think the way to combat that is just community, like really surrounding yourself with other people that make music or art or anything, and just talking to each other and like reminding each other that we're all doing what we can and like making what we can, and just continuing to like support each other. And then also what helps me sometimes is just making something wildly different, something
Hmm.
that has zero stakes, something that I don't expect to ever share anywhere that could be just absolutely terrible, but just really like trying something new and like, I don't know, getting a creative release.
Yeah, and I love that you said that last tip because I was going to bring up a Rick Rubin video I was watching yesterday because he was talking about artists who suffer from imposter syndrome or have writer's block. And it's usually
Mm,
because of like two things. Either you personally feel like nothing's really going on in your life, or you're starting to think too much about what other people like. And he was
yeah,
saying that
for sure.
one way to get out of that is start making music and thinking of it in terms of I'm just making a journal entry right now. No one's
Mm,
ever going to hear this. This is purely my journal entry. This is my therapy. Like this is my diary, and just make it like that. Which I think that makes so much sense. And we're constantly creating stuff that we think others will like, which sets you up for disappointment when people don't appreciate it. So I think the
yeah,
biggest thing is just remembering that you love doing it. For example, this
yeah,
podcast.
for
Like
sure.
for this podcast, I can compare myself to the Joe Buttons of the world, which are obviously the highest spectrum. I can compare myself with people who get tens of thousands of views on their YouTube video. And
Yeah,
if I'm doing it for tens of thousands of views, like that's not going to help me. Like I look forward when I wake up and I'm like, yes, we got an episode today. So I just love talking about music. And sometimes you can kind of forget about that when you're too focused comparing because who doesn't compare themselves to others?
absolutely. Yeah. Reminding myself that like I am making art for music as a job is just
It's awesome.
like an absurd blessing. And so yeah, sometimes you just need to kind of recenter and be like, oh no, I am good at this. I am doing this. Like I think it's you try to avoid seeking validation in other people's opinions, but I don't know, sometimes I'll look back and be like, oh no, I've worked with people that like I look up to.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm doing something right, you know?
No, 100%. I think Chris Patrick reached out to me randomly and was like, I love what you're doing with the podcast. I'm like, whoa, someone who I respect so much just reached out to me without me having to say anything. And it's human nature to focus on the negative moments or like a negative comment. But when people who you respect also respect the work you're doing, it's like the most rewarding thing. So it's like, cool, I think I'm taking the right steps, right path.
Absolutely. I mean, specifically to like Chris Patrick and all of Crossroads, they've been such a big like them constantly believing in me even before I was really doing much definitely helped me take this more seriously and continue to get more and more opportunities with it. Like I really think that there's so much value in just kind of investing in the people around you and not expecting anything of it and just kind of
Yeah.
all doing what we can to kind of, the rising tide lifts all boats type thing. We're just like, we're all kind
Mhm.
of doing what we can to support each other and in that kind of creating something bigger than any of us.
Yeah. Did you do the tour poster for the concert coming up?
Yeah, I
The
did.
anime?
So I did the winners and losers. So I didn't draw them. I did all of the design elements, but I did not
It's
draw the
insane.
actual
Yeah.
figures. I did an unofficial gang activity tour poster that ended up being used a bunch of places. I did the 95 Civic tour stuff for Dende.
Mhm.
Um,
You did the ice
got
cream
to do,
cone, right? You did
yeah.
the new album
So
cover.
I took that photo on my phone at
I saw
the
the picture.
Dende 95
Yeah.
Civic show. So yeah, hopefully going up for the SOBs show, it'll be nice to kind of see all the guys again and get to collaborate in person.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any just as a place for you to kinda, like, market yourself, are there any dream collaborations or people you're like, "I can see my style maybe matching with their music," or I have some type of loose
Yeah.
connection, I can see it happening?
Yeah, I have a few different categories of answers to that question. Designers that I would love to work with. I'd love to work with Dewey Saunders. I'd love to work with Nikki Chulo. I'd love to work with Emma Burrs. I'd love to work with Julia Fletcher. Woody Banks and I actually just did some work together, and I'm looking forward to doing more with him. In terms of like artist to artist collaboration. Musically,
Mhm.
my dream ones are like Pharrell, Young Thug. I mean, if I could ever do anything for Frank, uh, a little more realistically, I'd love to work with Deontay Hitchcock. We've talked a little bit here and there, but
So
like
good.
he's a guy that I really,
He's crazy.
really love. And he is another person that, like, he's done work with, he's done songs with Dende. He's
Mhm.
performed with Chris. Like he's investing in the community too. So it would be cool to get some work in there, just like knowing that it wouldn't be a completely transactional thing. Um, One of my dream ones that I was lucky enough to do was the cover for Valet. He's one of my favorite rappers just
Yeah, I see
ever.
you talking about him a lot.
Also, like I got to do a single that had a Superboy feature on it. That was another just like
Chicago? Yeah.
crazy one. Getting to do Getting to work with Fake Shore Drive on Project Pat merch has always been cool because just like Project Pat is one of the greatest ever.
Yeah.
And like a- Andrew Barber and Fake Shore Drive
Goat.
were like, I was checking that website every day when I was 15. So it's just such a cool, like, kind of full circle thing to be working with people you looked up to so much. Who else? I'd love to work with like Felix from Van Buren. We've been following each other on Twitter for years before Van Buren was kind of blowing up. So it's cool to see him continue to grow. Definitely want to get more work in with Asar. Well, Femdot would be really cool to work with. All of
I saw
Pivot Gang.
Yeah. I saw Femdot on tour. He was fire. For opening up for
Yeah,
Rendell. Dude was
yeah,
spitting.
he was sick. I got to see him on the Saboteur with Mindy.
That came to Columbus the day after I left to go home from college, and I was so mad
No.
because I love
When I
Sam.
was in college, Smino always did that to me. I was trying to see him for years before I finally
Yeah.
got to catch a show because it was always like, I have a final that day, or
Yeah.
I just went home, or whatever.
Well, this is a good transition to one of our topics about concerts because I know you just put out your list of concerts. You saw so many this year, and that's like my favorite
I
thing.
gotta do it again.
It's my favorite thing in the world. Smino is probably my top 3 favorite artists ever. So, and JID's top 3 too. It's probably
Mm.
Cole, JID, Smino. So that tour
Okay.
is something that I'm
Yeah,
like,
that was
this was
so
made
sick.
made for me. I drove 2 hours with my friend from school to see in Cincinnati, and discovered my new favorite artist, Jordan Ward, which was a crazy experience because
That was such a perfect opener fit for that show.
it was that man was yelling so loud in such like a wrestler fun way and still dancing and then still singing really well. And I was like, this is the best opening artist I've ever seen. And then
Yeah, I was a huge fan of the song "Lil Baby Crush" for a couple years before that, but
it's
hadn't really
it's
dove
amazing.
into the rest of his discography yet.
She
So
sound
getting
like
to
90s
see that,
R&B.
so getting to see that song was incredible. And then like Forward came a little while after, and like really getting deep into him was
Yeah.
incredible.
I knew him from like a Duckworth song that was on Duckworth's album, but I never, for
Oh,
whatever
nice.
reason, didn't dive into him. And it's just been everywhere for me this whole year. And that tour, I mean, they're just so damn good at performing. I was very happy to see that show.
Yeah.
As I was leaving, me and my friend saw people waiting, and we're like, "You know what? We're gonna drive home 2 hours anyway. Let's just wait outside this tour bus." So I got to meet Smino, and
Oh, hell yeah.
that he was out of his mind. He was probably on something, but I don't think he knew what I was saying to him. But I'm like, "You made Anita. You are the goat. It's so nice to meet you." I'm trying to think what else I saw. I saw Pusha T twice on this past tour. He was actually a really good
Oh, I got
performer.
my push set list right here.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, it was an amazing one. This is an old concert, but I think the fun part of shows, as we just said about Jordan Ward, is finding out later down the line, like, oh, that was the opener for that show I saw. So this is
Mhm,
the All American Badass tour. This is something for Joey Badass, and the openers were
mhm.
West Side Boogie, and Buddy. And
Oh, wow.
I wasn't even fans of them at the time. Now I look back and I'm like, damn, I guess I saw West Side Boogie and I didn't appreciate it because that guy is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's always some of the best shows. In 2014, I was at a tiny venue, maybe 100 people cap. It was Mick Jenkins and Kirk Knight, and opening for them they were listed at the time as Saba Pivot and No Name Gypsy. Like
Sheesh.
neither of them had even like fully. They didn't have their own. They hadn't fully locked in as just like Saba without the Pivot Gang attachment. No Name hadn't gone out as just No Name yet. No Name didn't have a project out, so she was just
Really?
performing like her SoundCloud demos, like Cherry Pie Blues, Dizzy, like all those songs. And Saba had Comfort Zone out, so he was doing a bunch of songs from Comfort Zone. But like each of them closed their set with their acid rap features because like that was their biggest
Yeah.
thing.
That's so
So
interesting.
it's crazy looking back. Like I've seen Saba 10 or 11 times now. So it's
Really?
crazy looking back to
Dang.
like seeing him in high school as like a just little baby Tyler.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm so glad I convinced my friend to go to that show. I was like, hey, if you drive me, I'll buy your ticket.
Good
Let's
deal.
do it. Yeah, it was like a random school night. I was like, we're going to drive an hour and
Yeah.
a half to go to this show. Just trust me.
I was the kid in high school, so I live really close to Philadelphia. So could just take
Mm.
a train in 20 minutes. And I would just go see shows alone because my friends didn't care to see Anderson Paak or see some of the
It's brutal.
lesser. I mean, to me, they're so amazing, the best artists ever, but they don't want to sit in line. So I'd go like front row. I was like waiting in
Mm.
line, making friends in line. And those were the best memories because I mean that made me fall in love with live music and seeing people. I was saying like Amine alone. Amine is one of my favorite performers. If you've ever seen him,
I need to catch him. I haven't yet.
he's amazing. I saw in high school I saw Logic with my brother, and my brother ditched me because it was too much standing for him. And I was like I was front row for that. He was a really good performer. I need to see. I saw Cole at a festival, but I don't think that counts. And I need to see. That's my goat, and I need to see J
Gotcha.
Cole live. That's my
Yeah,
dream show.
I've only seen Cole at Dreamville. I've seen him twice at Dreamville Fest,
How
but
how was Dreamville Fest? That's
it
I have to get
was
to it.
the first year was incredible. He brought out Meek. Meek was like fresh out of jail
Yeah,
that year, I think. So it was a really cool experience. I didn't go this year with Drake and everything, but Dreamville is just a very, very good energy for a festival. Everyone there is just like very laid back and just there to enjoy it. It's not a lot of like, pushing and shoving. And
yeah.
I feel like some crowds
They
can be a little ruder where like it was a very like family reunion type vibe at
yeah.
Dreamville.
My dream. I want to talk to someone at Dreamville, whether it be Ebe or it could be Barry Hefner, just because they've
Mhm.
developed this fan base so well, and like CD has amazing artists and they're great, but there's something about the fan base around Dreamville that they support like the other Dreamville sounding artists. You have Revenge of the Dreamers that are putting on so many new artists that like people will call them like Dreamville type artists,
Mhm.
and I feel like it's just such a cool fan base. I feel like it's everyone just really loves the music, and if they like one of the artists, they usually support every single one of them as if it was like
Yeah.
their favorite artist. So they've cultivated that so well.
Yeah. One of my favorite shows of this year was at the Sultan Room in Brooklyn, seeing Dende and Geogenesis together for the '95 Civic Tour. I remember just leaving that it was cool getting to go and hang before and like work with them as peers, but
Uh,
after the show, walking away just thinking like this guy's a star, and
yeah,
like Billy Blunt on guitar, the entire band just playing out of their
he's
mind. Like Dende did the entire EP and the entire album all the way through, rapped Chris's verse, rapped Deontay's verse, did an outfit change midway through. Like it wasn't just a good show of songs you like it was a performance that was really thought
mhm,
out and like really you could tell that a lot of time went into rehearsal and structuring and like it sounded better than the record even like it was just one of those like really special performances that makes you realize like everyone in this room right now is lucky to be here before it's the bigger venue.
yeah, that's a really awesome feeling. And Dende, I've only seen videos. I'm hoping to get to that show in New York. You can just tell he's a really like an actual real good singer. It's not just there's no effects on that. Like he is
Yeah,
amazing
no, he's incredible.
songwriter. Billy, I've said this aloud in the podcast. There's this freestyle that he did, or it wasn't a freestyle. He was performing a song on a show, and I need them to drop
Mhm.
it because it is so good, and Billy's producing on it. And I mean, they're obviously like they have that Dreamville vibe of how they're building up. And if you're a fan of Dende, you're probably a fan of Erica, Billy, and Chris. And if you're a fan of Chris, you're probably a fan of the others. And
Right.
they're featuring on each other's projects, and they're doing the EP with the songs. Once again, you made the art awesome and the merch.
Yeah, that was a really fun one to put together. Because I like had kind of put off working on it. I was like, I'm gonna not start this cover until after that show so that I could talk to everybody in person and kind of get a feel for it. And then Miz, who's the A&R for them, um, I realized he had the CXR tattoo on his wrist. And so I was like, oh, that would be perfect. Like I wanted a way to have CXR on the cover without having any text on it because I wanted
Mhm.
something just like iconic. And so I literally just ran 3 blocks to an ice cream store, asked them for the prettiest cone they could make for me. Ran back, it was melting on everything. We shot probably 100 photos, and then just, editing that sky behind it and everything to get it to where it needed to be. But that was just such a perfect, like, that we did that during sound check. We had like a 10-minute window that would work to take photos, and so it was just like, now or never, let's make it happen. I think that's part of why Crossroads does so well, that they're all so open to collaboration in the moment and figuring things out. It's like a very egoless group where it's all about like what's going to make the good art. I know when I work with them on merch or covers or anything, it's a lot of, they do usually have a vision and an idea, but there's also a lot of room for my own input or my own thoughts, and a lot of just like respect to the art above any one person's idea.
Yeah, that's how you get the best out of people. And
Absolutely.
it's so cool. I saw the picture you posted on Twitter of like the behind the scenes of that picture, and it kind of reminded me of like the Chance the Rapper picture with that kid, and you're like, whoa, that's where Acid Rap came from.
Right. That was just a photo of someone. Acid Rap's another one of my favorite covers ever.
Yeah.
Just missed my top 10.
Yeah. It's crazy. Some artist saw that picture and was like, I know what I can do with this. Like, there's a weird lighting on half your face. I think we can go with something here.
Yeah. A perfect one.
Crazy. Well, Tyler, I want to give you a space to shout out your work before we leave, where the people can find you, your website, and we'll tag it all below. But yeah, it's your spot. Mark it.
Yeah. So it's a little weird because most of my work is for other people right now. I'm going to be launching some merch top of the year, but I'm most active by far on Twitter, at Tyler Blank CQCX. If you look in my Twitter bio, you've got a link to my website with my portfolio. I also have a Spotify playlist you can link that is all of my covers that are on Spotify. But yeah, I've gotten to do a whole lot of work with a whole lot of cool people, and hope that this time next year I'm thinking the same thing with an entirely new crop of people. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, Tyler, thank you for coming on. And if you stayed to the end, thank you so much. Click subscribe, like it, share it to people who need art, and get Tyler some money.
See you guys. My playlist thing.
Yes.
Do we need to do that?
Yeah, sure,
I'm gonna go. Trophies, congrats, Asar and Chris Patrick.
I can't believe I forgot to do the playlist. I was just so excited to talk about the albums. We can still clip it on Twitter. My playlist title for the week is Ground Zero by Nito featuring Kieran the Nomad. It's such a California LA sounding like YG's song. They wrote the beat so well. Awesome track. Just wanted to shout them out. Sorry we didn't shout you out in the beginning, as we tend to do.
Yeah, Trophies, congrats, the Asar Chris track, just because this time of year is always so reflective. You kind of look back at everything you've accomplished in the last year, and sometimes, you get both the wins and the, like, I don't know, sometimes there's like an emptiness that comes with that. And I think that song does a really good job of covering like kind of the pros and cons of accomplishments.
Definitely.
And it's just two of my favorite artists.
Well, thank you so much for reminding me. Now I'm embarrassed that I forgot to do that in the beginning. But yeah,
you're good, I got you.
Follow Tyler, and we will see you next time. Peace.